体にカラスの止まりけり秋の暮れ
Life is very unique. The inner call of the soul makes us move. Movement makes us to choose our own path. Each path leads us to a certain place in life. This place gives birth to many professions and craftsmen, and each craft requires its own separate tool. Even if we are doing something seemingly simple. Artists need something that will help them create. Warriors need something they can rely on in battle. And sometimes the situation requires a special approach. There are tools that we need to become better and train our spirit. I want to tell you about such company that specializes in creating such tools. Sony is an old friend of mine. It has long been engaged in production of almost everything that is necessary on its own, starting from audio equipment and amplifiers,
Alpha,
ending with sensors for cameras and screen for devices. Before the arrival of pocket phones, we used various tools, calculators, cassettes and disc music players, dictaphones and small cameras. But with modern smartphones, most of them became unnecessary. Smartphones have everything we need inside them. And over time, they have replaced even small cameras for us, and are already beginning to replace laptops and computers. This has become, though doubtful, but an important and even necessary attribute of the modern era. My first phone of the so-called new era, when we lost the ability to easily change the battery, was the Sony Z2. For me, at that time it was the best phone. Stylish minimalistic design, but still human, and evoking nostalgia beyond time, beyond the visible, something that probably does not exist. But time goes on, progress does not stand still. And can the old samurai keep up with its course? Let's find out. I have a Sony Xperia 1 Mark VI in my hands. It cost me $1,300 for half a terabyte. And judging by the thin box, I know what to expect. Let's open it. Sony has surpassed its Korean rival, and not in the good way. There is only a phone and waste paper in the box. that is all. The box itself is made as if from a child's papier-mâché. Not even a damn cable in the box. Sony. But enough of the sad stuff. Design. Phone feels very lightweight for its size. The design is simple but stylish. It has been familiar to me since the first models. It is recognizable from the first sight. Square, slightly round edges. The back has the interesting textured surface like grooves, which makes the phone slightly less in your hand. We have a power button, which is also a fingerprint sensor. A separate button starts the camera, which at the same time is a shutter like on a real camera. The SIM tray slot can be opened by finger, without using special tools, and you can install a memory expansion using a micro SD card, up to 1.5 TB. I'm very glad that this seemingly basic function has been preserved in this phone. And most importantly, it's audio jack. This is what I want to see in all modern devices. It has very good signal amplifiers and can energize even powerful studio headphones and give excellent sound and volume. But you need to understand that the audio connector is needed not only for headphones, it is also a microphone jack. The audio port is a simple but at the same time very reliable connection, which has a round shape for good contact and grip. It's more resistant to physical wear and better water resistance than USB Type-C. It can never be the same. Therefore, such a connector is a standard of audio equipment and will not go anywhere. Moreover, modern smartphones most often do not have support for the wireless microphones in the most of their programs, such as the camera. And even if they have such support, the quality of even the most expensive wireless audio devices will always be worse than wired ones, even inexpensive ones. The signal is forwarded to the program, and we have a free USB slot for connecting an SSD disk, 4K monitor, or just for charging the phone. This is a huge plus. Of course, I would like to see a second additional Thunderbolt port, but small steps. Thanks for what we have. Phones are tools, and this tool is meant for the artists and creators. It should help and not stand on your way. By the way, we will compare all these phones against each other. Subscribe not to miss this next video where we will try to find out who is the best among them. Specs and price. We have a latest Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, but only 12 GB of RAM, sadly. Bluetooth 5.4, Wi-Fi, I truly do not know, I will explain. Old USB 3.2 Gen 1 with 5 GB speed, IP68 water resistance, and I got half a terabyte for $1,300. This is before tax and on grey market. We will talk about the price in the end, because in some regions it can easily be even higher. What I meant by saying that I do not know the speeds of Wi-Fi, I tried to search online, and even on Sony's website information is vague and unclear. Somewhere in the bottom small text says that Wi-Fi speeds depends on region. So some websites claim to have Wi-Fi 7, which I doubt. On Sony website it only says that it is certified by old Wi-Fi 6E standard. And my box do not even say anything specific, just only Wi-Fi certified. Strange and shady. The same goes to some other specs. Screen. Here Sony has its own unique design. They completely ignore any modern sleek standards and just give you square, clean screen without any camera holes, weird islands, but you have bezels on the bottom and top as a result. Personally, I do not mind it. I do not care about borders, thickness, bezels, about any of this stuff when I watch a screen. I watch content. No camera holes nor bezels distract me. And Sony has its own manufacturer lines for the screen and Bravia department that is known for their TVs. So I expect it to be top quality. We have the same, lots of loud trick words like Cine Alta, Master Monitor, powered by Bravia, Sunlight Vision, but almost nothing specific on website and presentation, without proper numbers. We have 120 Hz and no ability to control it in power saving mode. it forces it to 60 Hz. If Sony does not bother to inform us with proper numbers and specifications, I won't waste too much time looking and digging for all this. We'll just tell my personal feelings. Brightness is really very good. Outside I had no problems with visibility. Colors are vibrant, enjoyable watching experience, but have noticed some OLED pulsations, and I'm very sensitive for these problems of modern devices. So I'm worried about long-term eye strains and headaches. If you don't know, all OLED and AMOLED screens due to physical construction have perceived pulsations. They are invisible for naked eye, but your eyes and brain are still affected by them. Most companies try to mitigate and lower this effect to save our vision and health, so I'm a little bit uncomfortable here. Battery and charging. Charging speeds are again a very unclear topic on the Sony's website. Lots of loud words like fast charging, 2 days of battery life, Qi wireless support, but nothing specific and clear. We can see that it says up to 30 watt speeds, and that's all. But reality of charging speed is sad. If Sony thinks that for $1,300 to $1,500 they cannot put not only a charging brick but also a freaking cable, I will use what I have. I am using universal 100 watt gun brick with 100 watt cable. Maybe if we use Sony charger we can get better results, but here what we have. %, was on 13 minutes and 40 seconds. 20% was on 28 minutes and 52 seconds. Some phones go from 0 to 100 for this time. 33% was on 50 minutes and 20 seconds. My watches died and camera went low on battery. 50% was in 1 hour and 14 minutes. I was very tired of this test. Battery inside my camera died and I had to connect it to the wall. 80% was at 2 hours and 9 minutes. 100%! Finally! After 2 hours and 48 minutes, we get full charge. Even if we buy charger bricks that will work better with this phone, even if we can lower this time to 2 hours or even 1 hour and 30 minutes, it will still be slow. Not to tell that for this amount of money for luxurious product, I have to spend my precious lifetime trying to research, find and buy additional accessories. Both situations look not good for this phone in terms of battery charging speeds. As for the battery life itself, I can't complain. Under heavy loads like 4K video recording, it loses battery somewhere around the same as all other flagships, maybe even slightly better. But in real life use, I get 8 to 10 hours of screen on time, which is both good and kinda basic at this point in time. But nowhere near 2 days of battery life as sketchy marketing materials say. So, very bad charging speeds and solid full day of use battery life, with plenty amount left at the end of the day. By the way, you can physically set charging limit to 90 or 80% to prolong battery health long term. I love this. Heat and temperatures. Device is very good in terms of heat management, maybe because it is not so power hungry in the first place, but it feels very comfortable in the hand, and even in 4K 60 recording, it barely goes warm, and only in the camera section, so no problems for that. The only problem I came across was in 4K 120 fps video recording, but that was on a direct sunlight. The screen went dim and then device turned off my camera. It was very warm for the touch. The same situation occurred on the fast photo mode. The device stopped me from using the program. Speakers and sound. And here is the good part. We already talked about solid amplifiers in the audio and microphone jack. Audio from the stereo speakers is loud and clear. It can easily fight among the best phones out there. Apple usually puts good quality speakers inside their products, so it will be a good indicator and benchmark. Take a listen for yourself. OS and features. Xperia 1 Mark VI uses Android 14 right now and give you almost full naked Android experience with Sony style, visuals and sounds. It has preserved the feelings and traditions. Design is very similar to the Sony Xperia Z2, almost identical after all these years. It reminds me of Sony PlayStation Portable, PlayStation 3 times, Windows Vista, Aero style with transparent, minimalistic and abstract design. I love it. Very nostalgic and brings some deep feelings. In the past, Sony had lots of devices, like music players, audio recorders, and I expect smartphone from Sony to soak all this spirit and to impersonate all these tools in one device to help you in tricky and daily situations. But, to my surprise, it lacks not only new interesting features, but almost basic functionality. Straight out of the box, we have no audio recorder, no calculator, nothing. Some Google bloatware, and for some weird reason, out of the box I got Call of Duty Warzone game pre-installed on my phone. I had to find Sony's Music Pro app on the internet. It should record 32-bit float audio. For some weird reason, Sony apps are not installed on the device out of the box. I remember different Xperia apps that are no longer here. It feels like a lonely run in the liminal spaces, with echoes of the past times that I will never be able to come back to. I was expecting at least something, but not complete emptiness. Let's look at the animations and user experience. Let's see some settings. Battery. We have some stamina mode. Reverse wireless charging. In sound and vibration we can enhance playback quality. A very nice feature, by the way. Wind noise reduction. We can control vibration and haptics. Display. Image quality settings. Powered by Bravia, we have some creator mode with Rec 2020 color gamut and 10-bit. Also has some video image enhancement. Let's preview. It gives you more pop, more contrast, more sharpness, clarity. Cool. Dark theme. And lock screen. This is global device. We have full always on display, show time and info. When the screen is locked, it will show you this. Wake screen for notifications. You can select your clocks. For example, this analog clock. One hand mode. Here it looks like this. I don't see any cool always-on display features here. Only the clock. Maybe I'm missing something? Besides some basic functionality, Xperia phone feels very shallow. Not so much is going on here. Operation and view. By the way, we have this side panel. If we swipe to the side, it will open the dashboard. Very cool. If you swipe up, it will open application in pop-up window or multi-window. For example, web browser. Wallpaper and lock screen. We have some live wallpapers. Security. It has fingerprint scanner built into the power button, but we don't have any face unlock, only the fingerprint scanner. So that's all, nothing interesting. For some reason phone doesn't have any calculator pre-installed, no voice recorder, nothing. Some Google bloatware. Call of Duty Warzone for some reason was pre-installed. Camera hardware. What comes to mind when you hear word Sony? For me, it associates with Sony Alpha and FX cinema lineup. Camera is a second sad story here. Let's quickly discuss hardware. Sony went for scene and light design. That sacrificed all the possibilities for camera quality and hardware. All sensors are kinda small. We have triple camera setup, 16mm ultra-wide, 1/3.5 inches, f2.2, not very wide and not very bright, 24mm 1/135 inch size with 1.9 aperture. Some other phones have telephoto models with such sensor size, by the way. And 85 to 170mm 1/3.5 inch size, f2.3 to f3.5 aperture. It has unique design, glass lenses moves inside, providing physical optical zoom. Very cool, but this is on paper, we need only the quality results. We will compare all these phones in the next review to understand who is the best among them. Camera software. And here is a tricky part. Camera app tries to be similar to Sony Alpha mirrorless camera, which in theory should be good. But I am a Sony mirrorless camera user, and I am not pleased with its menu system. It is somewhat clunky, unintuitive, and not comfortable at all. I wish mirrorless cameras got smartphone OS features and systems, but not the other way around. Let's quickly overview the camera app. Basic photo mode, nothing special here. We can change lenses. We can change colors, natural, vivid, film nostalgic. Portrait mode is called bokeh here. We can select amount of blur. The cool feature here is that we can track our focus. Press on your object, and it will be tracked. Also a neat feature that you can slide exposure compensation and white balance in any photo mode. Very cool. Pro mode. The layout is very similar to the Alpha cameras from Sony. We have exposure compensation wheel. We can select shooting modes, program auto, shutter priority and manual exposure. We have FN button. We can change all the settings from here. By default it has single shooting mode. We can select low continuous shooting. Also high drive mode. And even higher, high plus. Also we have continuous shooting in HDR. This is the buffer. With time it cleans itself, but you can actually continue shooting before it cleans for the full. But you need to wait for the full before you can change any parameters. Also we have overheat pop-up, just from shooting in this drive photo mode. The most annoying part here is that you can't change all the parameters at the same time. For example, now I am in continuous shooting mode. I can choose Dynamic Range Optimizer, but I can't choose HDR. Also, I cannot choose RAW. I need to go into the single shooting mode first. Now we can choose RAW or JPEG. Also, I can turn on computation, but I can't turn on HDR. First of all, I need to press computation, turn it off, and only then I can press HDR. and if I press continuous shooting, HDR automatically turns off. And if I go back to the single shooting mode, HDR is still off. So you need to remember all these parameters and keep in your head in which mode, what settings work and what not. Very tedious, very annoying, you need to do extra steps, extra clicks, and potentially this mode can turn off beginners from using it. If we press menu here, you can see that it is somewhat similar to the modern Sony Alpha cameras. This is very annoying that I can't choose RAW, because I am in drive mode. I need to do extra clicks, choose the drive mode, single shooting, back, and only then I need to press JPEG, RAW, back. You see, lots of extra clicks, lots of extra work. Very annoying. No video in this Pro mode. Let's check normal video mode. Nothing major. We can choose some presets. For example, cinetone, bright, nostalgic, film, vivid and natural. And the best part here that we have 4K 120 frames per second in all camera models. Ultra wide, main sensor and telephoto. Very cool. Slow motion, 4K 1/4, Full HD 1/4, but nothing major here. Let's press more options. Telephoto macro, 48 megapixels, bokeh video, live streaming and panorama. Nothing interesting, I don't even see dedicated night mode here. Of course, it has night mode. If we close our lens, you should be in dark conditions, so night mode can kick in. But you can't force phone to go into night mode. The phone decides for you when to use it and when not. On other phones you have a lot more interesting modes, for example, night mode, long exposure, star trails for astrophotography, super moon mode, astro mode, for astro portraits. We have interesting portrait mode with facial retouching and reconstruction, cool AI cameras where we can change seasons of the year, and lots of more. So I find experience of the photo app very basic, very minimalistic, without any interesting features. Xperia has some basic smartphone functionality, like gimmicky fake bokeh effect, it has night mode, basic HDR computation, and pretty much it. No special modes, like astrophotography and light and shadow trails, no breakthrough AI models, algorithms, no tonal mapping, normals mapping, depth mapping, no pixel-based detail drawing, nothing. One may say that true, real photographers do not need all these funky artificial smartphone gimmicks. Natural and real results with true-to-life colors is what really matters. And I can even agree, but only in one situation, if image quality is good. But no more words, and let's see photo results and compare them against real mirrorless camera. Alright my friends, let's start. We won't go too deep right now, we will leave this to the next video, where we will compare 5 phones. And now let's have a quick overview, because even though I'm a big Sony fan and I want to like this phone, but there is not that much to talk about in terms of camera quality. Here on the left we have ultra-wide module and main sensor on the right. And I feel like ultra-wide is not very wide, it is only 16mm, and we won't go too deep into the ultra-wide modules in this video, we need to compare it against something to get an idea. We will focus more on the main sensor and telephoto capabilities. Sony Xperia phone on the left and mirrorless Sony camera ZVE 10 on the right. All photos on smartphone made in automatic mode, basic camera application, and all photos on the mirrorless camera made in RAW. I applied only basic correction, nothing major, and what I want to say, I love colors on the Sony smartphone. They really try to represent reality, and we have nice skin tones, but color is little bit magenta and red. Of course, I could do a little bit better here, made more saturation, apply more contrast, but I didn't want to spend too much time on the post-processing. I try to recreate ease of use of the smartphones on the mirrorless camera as much as possible, without using tripod and without spending too much time on the post-processing. I can skip post-processing step because JPEGs straight out of cheap mirrorless camera are not so good, to say the least. And this step I can skip because the only possible way to make something remotely good on cheap mirrorless cameras is to use RAW photography. Without zooming in, it seems that Sony smartphone made a lot better shot than Sony mirrorless camera, but when we try to zoom in, we can see the limitations on the Xperia sensors. They are too small and they do not use that much computational photography. Some people do not like when I call them AI models, but most smartphones use normal mapping, depth mapping, pixel level rescaling, and Sony Xperia phone does not use that much of computation. Instead, they heavily rely on noise reduction, sharpening, and sometimes we can see too much overprocessing here. Too much sharpness, too little details left after noise suppression, and we just can't control it. And on these raw files I could easily apply some mid-tone sharpening and so on. But I will say, even though Sony Xperia phone lacks hardware powers, on the other hand, Sony mirrorless camera lacks software power and computational algorithms. So it is lose-lose situation. Sony, what are you going to do? And these interesting telephoto modules on Sony that are physically moving inside are not so impressive, to tell the truth. We see lots of over-sharpening, lack of details, especially if you look on the hairs, very rough shadow performance. You can see here no small refined details and lots of over-sharpening. By the way, there is a big difference between just simple sharpening and computational AI rescaling. You can't create details from nothing. If you just apply sharpness for the image with lack of details, you will get this weird artificial look. And if you use some trickery, you can get yourself very close to the image from the mirrorless camera. The same goes to the 7X telephoto module on Xperia phone. I am not very impressed, but without zooming in, I love overall feeling of the image, I love colors, even contrast levels are good. Maybe this background blur is somewhat weird. I've noticed that this physical construction of the Sony lens, when it physically moves glass inside back and forth, creates some weird artifacts on the background bokeh. And optical image stabilization, OIS, inside this Xperia smartphone is also very poor. On the screen, when you try to make a photo, it is very shaky and sometimes give you motion blur after taking the picture. By the way, have I mentioned, this is Sigma zoom lens 2.8. If we use prime lens, for example, 30mm, 56mm, 1.4 from the same Sigma brand, you will get even better and sharper results. The lens is the most important part in the photo quality on the mirrorless camera. If you put good lens on the bad camera body, you will get nice results. And on the other hand, if you put bad lens on the good camera body, you will still get bad results. But this is not the point of this video. The point is not only in raw image quality, but also comfort and ease of use. And constantly switching lenses in the field is not very pleasant experience. So we will use only general zoom lens, without any switching of the lens. No tripods, no lens changing. We will try to use mirrorless camera body, just like a smartphone, to simulate experience of just average person. Sony. Some selfie, again very nice colors. Actually, Sony's selfie camera is not so bad. Maybe only colors slightly bit magenta and red. In reality, it is a little bit yellow. Let's test some landscapes. Main sensor on Xperia phone, 18mm on the Sigma lens on the Sony ZVE 10. Xperia uses 24mm, and if we calculate APS-C crop factor, we will get somewhere 27mm, so it will be a little bit tight. And what I want to tell you, that Sony really improved computational photography from their last models. We can see shadow information, sky is not blown out, great color separation. I kinda like it. But let's zoom in and see the hardware side. Lots of blues in the shadow parts. It means that Sony Xperia phone will struggle a lot in the low light situations and in these high dynamic range situations. But not so bad if we take into consideration that Sony cheaped on the hardware side and gave us these small, not so powerful sensors. Even though APS-C sensor is noticeably better in terms of raw powers, small details, I am still kinda very disappointed. that the gap between this Xperia phone with bad hardware is not so drastic as I thought. I really wish I could pull these shadows more on this mirrorless camera. It really shows us that mirrorless camera manufacturers need to do something with computational photography, and I'm talking about raw computational photography. And it doesn't mean that you will instantly get some gimmicks, over sharpness, over saturation, plastic skin effect. No, I mean better dynamic range, cleaner shadows, less noise on your image, because all photographers are already doing this computation, but they are doing this by themselves, by wasting their time and resources. For example, if you want to take better shot, you need to take a tripod, you need to take 3 photos, and then by yourself combine them together on your computer. This way you will get better dynamic range, better shadow noise performance, but imagine if you can get this in camera without tripod, by just pressing a shutter button. Maybe lose slight resolution in the process, but you will get this ease of use. You will get a raw file with a lot more dynamic range. You can push and pull highlights a lot more to preserve sky and clouds and get more shadow information. So I'm not asking, I'm demanding computational raw photography inside new mirrorless cameras. And let's come back to our Xperia phone. I talk too much. Let's compare telephoto models. We have 3.5x on the Xperia phone and 50mm on the Sigma lens. This is the maximum you can go with this setup without changing the lens. And what we can see, not bad, but also nothing impressive. We have a lot of over-sharpening going on Xperia phone, and mirrorless camera has natural details. We can apply some sharpening and get better results than this, but shadow noise performance is atrocious on both of them. To tell the truth, I am not very pleased with this Sony ZVE 10. 2 years ago I had Sony A7 III full-frame camera, and though I was not very pleased with it and sold it at that time, but it was a lot better than this ZVE 10 with its recycled old sensor. If you want to buy small camera for photography, I really do not recommend you buy this camera. It will be a lot better than this smartphone in most situations, but I guarantee you the process of taking photos won't be that enjoyable, as well as post-processing. Remember, this is the maximum we can go with this lens. On Sony we can zoom in a lot more, but I do not see any benefits of doing this. Even if we crop in this portion, we will still get better photo. Maybe we can see slight improvements in the small details on Sony, but as you can see we have some movement in shot. This optical image stabilization is just not reliable. You need to take 5 to 10 photos to be sure that some of them will be sharp. We can see this motion blur from the movement of the optical image stabilization. But what is going on with this noise on the mirrorless camera? Sony ZVE 10. I kinda feel bad for owning this camera right now. And the maximum that Xperia phone can go is 20x. Let's crop in here on the mirrorless camera. And actually I can see the big benefit of doing this on the smartphone. Here is ultra-wide lens on Xperia phone, and this is main sensor. And yeah, image is wider, but this is nothing mind-blowing. When you go wide, each millimeter counts, so 14 or even 12 millimeters will be a lot wider and nicer in this situation. On mirrorless camera you need to change lens to get wider view, that's why we will compare it only against main sensor. Even though image on smartphone is not bad and looks brighter, but mirrorless camera will give you a lot more contrast levels and perception of depth. Image on the smartphone is somewhat flat, and image on the mirrorless camera is 3-dimensional. Better light and color gradients. But I will say not bad, but also not impressive. Shadow performance is very bad on these cheap mirrorless cameras. This is a real limitation. Lots of sharpening going on Xperia phone. Kinda soft image from this zoom Sigma lens 2.8. I feel like little bit of sharpening won't hurt. 3.5x zoom on smartphone, 50mm on Sigma lens on the mirrorless camera, and we see the lack of dynamic range, and image overall looks very flat. You need the sun to set little bit and you will get a lot better shot without harsh highlights and with better 3-dimension depth. If you zoom in, you can see lots of sharpening. If we switch to the telephoto, we immediately can see the image quality hit. Less contrast, bad shadow performance. But again, if photography is not your hobby and you really don't care about image quality, this is very acceptable results. Just don't zoom in that much and you will be fine. This is the maximum we can go on mirrorless camera. Let's just crop image, and you can see that Xperia smartphone does not improve your zoom capabilities that much. You can just crop in on this mirrorless camera and get similar or better result. I want to test selfie camera without zooming in. Not bad. I like colors, but my face looks a little bit too red. I feel like lots of HDR is going on. Yeah, selfie cameras are not that great in almost any modern smartphone. I feel like nothing to add here. Let's move on. Let's test macro capabilities. It is not that great on the Sony Xperia phone. This is maximum you can go with Sigma lens. This is not bad in any means, because this is the only one zoom lens in Sony APS-C cameras that can go that close to a subject. If we zoom, we can see that image is a lot better on mirrorless camera. At this point you can just crop it and get better results. Also, I want you to pay attention. This physical design inside telephoto lens on Sony gives you this weird halation. You can see these lines. Also, you can see this in the background blur. Very weird and even somewhat distracting. So, macro photography is not the strong point of this. We will explore more macro photography capabilities in the next video. It will be better to compare it against other smartphones to understand what is going on. I suggest you to use 2x digital zoom instead of telephoto. Main sensor. Let's test dynamic range. Even without zooming in, I can see that mirrorless camera struggles a lot in the shadow part, as well as in the skies. Telephoto models. Sometimes Xperia phone can give you this. Not every time, but it happens more than I wish in high dynamic range situations or in the low light. To get better shot and contrast levels, try to hide the sun behind some objects. By the way, look here on the Xperia phone, the same weird light artifacts. They look like line and streaks. Very weird. I feel like this is because of optical construction quality of these lenses that moves inside. Let's quickly stress test HDR capabilities. This is ultrawide module on Xperia phone, and this is main sensor. We can see that image is wider, but not by a mile. I wish we get more wide lens, 14, 13 or maybe even 12mm. Sony Xperia phone on the left, Sony mirrorless camera on the right. I love this image on mirrorless camera. .5x on Xperia phone, 30mm on the Sigma lens on mirrorless. Contrast levels are a lot better on mirrorless camera, better color reproduction, image degrades a lot in the telephoto shots on Xperia. And on 7.1x, maximum optical zoom on the phone, we completely lost all the dynamic range and all the contrast also. Mirrorless camera did not focus on the eye properly, and I can see this weird pattern on the phone. What is going on? Sony? Why are you letting me down in both situations? And if we wait for the sunset, we can see lots of lens flares here, also on Sigma lens. But what I have noticed that these cheap mirrorless cameras lack lots of dynamic range. We have completely burned sky and there is not so much left in the shadows. Even though I'm not so impressed with Xperia smartphone, I feel like I'm not pleased at all with this APS-C mirrorless camera's performance, dynamic range and shadow performance, to be specific. Some zoom, Sony's telephoto shenanigans. And once again, look at these weird artifacts on the bokeh. It looks very weird and busy. Dragon is blurred here because of shallow depth of field. We are using 2.8 lens on the large APS-C sensor. I tried to use built-in flash on this smartphone. Photographers usually use flash during the day to light their models. So subject is well lit and we still have lots of dynamic range in the sky. And I hoped that it will have smartphone to get this effect, but actually no. And the worst part that you can't control anything in this situation. You can't bring exposure down to help. When you turn on flash, smartphone refuses to let you control the exposure compensation, which is a bummer. Let's move further. This is the last test for dynamic range. Inside this time, what we see, even though Sony smartphone has small sensor, budget mirrorless APS-C camera just can't handle those highlights. This is the true power of computational photography. And this is what I want to see from the mirrorless cameras. Clean computational RAW files with tons of dynamic range and nice shadow information. Of course, if we zoom in on Sony Xperia, we will see lots of hardware limitations. We can see here more texture on the fabric, better details of the skin, small hairs, eyelashes, and so on. Sony. Look here, we almost completely lost these inside highlights. This is what I want to see from the mirrorless cameras of the future. I want to have this option. I want this to be the artistic choice. If I want, I can reveal all the information, or just raise exposure, giving this high-K mood, with lots of sunlight, like we are filling the room with the sun. So this should be artistic choice, but not the limitation of the cheap camera. Telephoto shot. I like overall image a lot more on the mirrorless camera here, but it was very hard to balance between these highlights and shadows to get good exposure on the model and try to preserve some information outside the window. And this was near the window, with lots of sunlight. If we move further away from the window, it will be completely impossible to preserve this information outside. The only possible solution in this situation is to shoot on the tripod and make multiple photos. Don't get me wrong, I don't enjoy quality of this smartphone image at all. If we zoom in, we can see the abyss in the image quality department. My biggest problem with this ZVE camera is dynamic range and atrocious noise performance. Little bit of selfie for those who like to take pictures of themselves. I wish manufacturers put better selfie cameras in the smartphones, not only for photo powers, but also for video. Initially I bought ZVE for my wife, so she can shoot video of herself, but she keeps using selfie camera, even for filming herself. And let's test fast-moving subjects. This is in complete automatic mode. Xperia phone does not have any sport mode or burst mode in these automatic settings. It has very nice burst in Pro mode, but we will talk a little bit later about it. I like that Xperia phone has face and eye tracking, the same as on mirrorless camera, but dynamic range is not very good, and this is the best shot among all. Most of the time you will get blurry image. Some telephoto shenanigans. Again, almost complete loss of dynamic range for some reason in this situation. And this is the best shot among all. There were lots of blurred images on the smartphone. And on mirrorless camera you will get better image almost every time. So if your priority is sport or shooting fast-moving subjects, mirrorless camera is the way to go, unfortunately, right now. In the end of the video we will test RAW capabilities of this smartphone in the same situation, so stay tuned. Inside the Pro mode, maybe it can help get better images. You really need to take under control your device to get better images in these fast-moving situations. By the way, Xperia smartphone has this burst mode. It is a very interesting technique. It is the same idea as on mirrorless cameras. You have a buffer, you are pressing the shutter, and you are free to take lots of pictures until the buffer fills. You can release the shutter and press again after a couple of seconds, and by this you can take photos almost indefinitely. But we can see that image quality degrades a lot in this burst mode, to the point that I can't even recommend using it. Be very careful with it. And by the way, you can't do this in automatic mode. You need to go inside Pro mode. First of all, you need to choose JPEG, then you need to choose continuous shooting. Very tedious and annoying, to tell the truth. This reminds me of Sony mirrorless camera menu system. It is very clunky, unintuitive, and not comfortable. I wish we have smartphone menu system inside mirrorless camera, but not opposite. Let's quickly test low light performance. This is Evening, Xperia phone ultra-wide, and main sensor. Yes, it's wider, not by a mile. I wish we get more. Let's test it against ZVE 10. Sony. Even without zooming in, So much noise. ISO is 1600, it's painful to watch. Complete lack of details. In the past, I have declared ZVE 10 to be ultimate noise generator machine, so we can officially call it Sony Noise Generator 9000. Because, look here, complete lack of any details. Even these cheap and bad sensors inside Xperia phone can make you better picture in these rough conditions. I just really don't get it. This is the same company. I wish we have smartphone approach inside these real cameras. Let's see telephoto performance. Oh my god. Sony. Smartphone went autofocus. Mirrorless camera drown in noise. What is going on? You can see the abyss and emptiness inside the shadow. There is just zero information, only the void filled with noise. The only possible solution here is to crush these shadows and pretend that you have a moody dark image. This is the only solution. Let's test some evening selfie quality. Xperia phone on the left, ZVE 10 on the right, ISO levels is 3200, and smartphone image is too overprocessed, but we see this void made of noise inside Sony image. I am really not pleased with the results of this small camera. By the way, ZVE 10 has the same sensor as Sony a6400, 6100. They just use old recycled hardware and materials inside these cheap cameras. That's why, if you care about photography, I encourage you to look at the full-frame market. You will get better hardware, you will get better build quality, better shooting experience, but of course those cameras are pricey. And if you find nice discounts, you can actually get nice full-frame camera for the cost of this smartphone. So it is really hard for me to recommend you buy this phone instead of a camera, or buy this cheap camera instead of the smartphone. This is lose-lose situation. Situations like this, complete darkness, even though I'm not too impressed with the performance of the night mode inside Xperia phone. But Sony APS-C camera is complete embarrassment. We have some ninja detection inside Xperia, while on the APS-C, by the point you can realize anything, you will be dead. You just cannot spot any shinobi inside this darkness, only the void of noise. By the way, ISO levels are 25,000 over here, so in the darkness forget about APS-C camera. And the only possible solution in this situation like this is to bring some light. I can see noise patterns without zooming in with my naked eyes. You need to bring these shadow parts down, crush the blacks, and pretend that you have a moody style image. Xperia lost some focus. It does this a lot in the low light situations. But if you can see, even these cheap and small sensors can give you better information in the darkness because of computational photography. These large corporations will keep to milk their customers with old obsolete technology until they are made by force to add this computational photography inside their real cameras, because this noise performance is abysmal. So, when we get some light, image is somewhat acceptable on the mirrorless camera. This is main sensor on Xperia phone. We can see lots of noise creeping in. But we can see that APS-C camera has a lot better tonality, light and color gradients, but this noise, it just ruins everything. This is just stupid. This noise just pain to watch. Telephoto shot without zooming in. Phone is brighter, mirrorless camera has lots of noise, but tonal gradients are a lot nicer. When we get some light, mirrorless is better. But look at these corners. It looks like heat death of universe going on us from all the sides of the image. So, at night, if we have a light, we will get acceptable results from both of them. What is going on with these corners? Sony, are you okay? As soon as we have no light at all, we are getting this ISO 32,000. This is death by 1000 grains, and we have a lot more information on the smartphone. Of course, image is not very good, but this is not the point. This is almost the same price setup. $1,300 smartphone and $1,300 mirrorless camera. Choose your poison. If we move to telephoto, situation becomes more sad, very dark and mushy on smartphone, very grainy on the mirrorless camera. Inside your photo editing software you need to bring those shadows and blacks way down until all this noise is hidden, bring some whites up and heavily denoise all this image and pretend that it was our intentions. Moody and dark image. And let's test these tricky light conditions. Even though image on the mirrorless looks a lot better, but this noise, painful. Telephoto ISO level is 640. Selfie camera at night, ISO 5000 on the mirrorless. Noise is coming and consumes you. So, what I want to say in the end, after watching all this, I have a very mixed feelings. I am a big Sony fan, I love Sony smartphones and Sony cameras also, because of the availability of the lens collection. But I am not very impressed, by the way, both by the smartphone and by this APS-C camera. But if I really had to choose, I feel like small mirrorless camera will suit you better for photography. You will get better results almost in all situations, beside night mode and complete darkness. So this is just my feelings and personal opinion. Sony fans, please don't be rude in the comment section. I really want Sony Xperia smartphones to be good in photography department, but reality is harsh, and if your deciding factor is photography alone, I won't recommend you a Sony smartphone, unfortunately. This last photo section, let's compare RAW files of the Xperia phone. Straight up, highlight recovery is not impressive. You need to be very careful with it. Let's reveal all the noise. And the same goes to shadows. Not so much going on. So the same goes to colors. I'm not very impressed with flexibility. So, not much that we can do here. Let's see telephoto, the same situation, I feel. So, we get what we get. Sony Xperia smartphone does not have any computational RAW, so we are stuck only with this raw sensor power. Here is raw files from Sony ZVE 10, mirrorless APS-C camera, and right away. This is a lot better. Highlight recovery, we can see lots of information in the skies. A lot better shadow recovery. Let's reveal some noise. So, image is a lot more flexible. We get more information in the highlights, more information in the shadows, a lot more details overall. Color information is better. We can push and pull colors a lot more and get away with more creative choices. Not to tell about autofocus and fast-moving subject performance. And all of this in high burst mode. So in this regard, mirrorless camera is even untouched. So let's compare smartphone against mirrorless camera. So smartphone on the left and mirrorless on the right. We can clearly see some difference in the noise patterns, more details in the shadow, better color separation, and of course better highlight performance. The same goes to the telephoto. Night and day difference in terms of details. We can see better color information on the mirrorless camera. Noise patterns are a lot worse on this smartphone. But of course, this is to be expected. We have a larger sensor, we have better lens, better autofocus performance, and smartphone does not use any computation at all in this raw photography. I feel the same goes to the low light. We have the same shutter speed, and ISO is 6400 on both. So even without zooming in, we can see that mirrorless camera is better. I would be very surprised if it is not, because we are comparing small sensor against APS-C, large sensor, and even though mirrorless camera is better, I am still not pleased at all, because it is only better inside light information, but in my opinion shadow performance is almost the same. We have slightly less noise on the APS-C sensor, but still we have nothing inside it, no details whatsoever. This is just an embarrassment. So if you are in search for the good mirrorless camera right now, I highly suggest you not only to skip these cheap budget Sony cameras, but maybe APS-C cameras in general. Try to look at something good in full frame department. That's all in the photo comparison part. Stay tuned for the next video. We will compare 5 different phones against each other. Little bit of Samsung S24 Ultra, and of course Oppo Find X7 Ultra, Vivo X100 Ultra, Xiaomi 14 Ultra, and we'll mention little bit of iPhone. So let's make some conclusions and move to the video part. Maybe 5 years ago I would be very happy with this phone and results of the photos, but not in 2024. I'm disappointed and sad because I want to love this smartphone. I really want it to be my favorite daily device, but the raw powers and performance hold it back for multiple generations. There are some smartphones on the market that I can easily recommend for beginners instead of entry-level budget cameras, but not in this situation. Results are not impressive during the day and non-existent during low light and bad conditions, especially if you will use it in rough and everyday life conditions. Raw photography is uninspiring, and I feel like a waste of your time on this device. You can buy yourself a cheap camera and get better results, or even better camera phone, if photos and raw mobile photography is your hobby. Of course, it depends on the hands of the photographer and beauty of your scene, but if we pay around $1,500, I expect your tool to be your helping hand and make life easier rather than being an obstacle on your way. And this phone feels like stands on my way. Video features. Video is interesting topic here. Sony is the only phone that allows you to shoot 4K 120 fps in all camera lenses. This is huge, but unfortunately we have no 10-bit and log for now in this new camera app. But good news, that third-party applications have almost all features, including stabilization, 10-bit recording in log and color gamuts. But no 32-bit float audio for now. Sadly, only 16-bit float. Slowmotion is rather disappointing, except of 4K 120 frames per second. We do not have any extra slow motion features, no pre-recording from buffer. When we press rec button, it can record couple of seconds before, like Time Machine, to never miss anything important. I love slow motion, but disappointed to see nothing here. If sensor can read so fast that you can record 4K 120, why you can't reduce a resolution, crop in and make it burst only for 1 or 2 seconds? The same situation in Sony Alpha cameras. We had slow motion in old Sony cameras, but modern ones lack it. Let's see some video examples. During the day. This is Sony Xperia phone. Main sensor. To tell the truth, I have high hopes on this phone. in terms of video quality. Xperia phones were my favorite in the past. I'm a little bit sad to see how they behave in terms of photo quality against other Chinese phones. This is Sony ZVE 10 Sigma 18 to 50mm 2.8 lens. I'm using 18mm right now and speaking directly into the camera. No microphones attached. I will use Catalyst Browse software for stabilization. It uses gyro data inside this camera. Maybe we'll use 5 to 10% crop. This is DJI Osmo Pocket 3. I'm talking directly into this device, no microphones attached. I'm speaking directly. What is the sound quality? Do you like it? What is the image quality compared to the phones? Please tell me. This is Sony Xperia 1 Mark 6 ultra-wide lens. I'm speaking directly into the phone, no microphones attached. What is the sound quality? What is the image quality? Do you like this? ZVE 10. Now I'm using Sony G lens 15mm 1.4. Can you spot any difference in the field of view? $15mm should be a lot better for the Catalyst Browse software. How is the quality compared to smartphones? And this is DJI Osmo Pocket 3, and now I'm using ultra-wide lens attachment. This accessory you can buy separately from this device. This gives you a lot noticeably more field of view. This is front-facing camera, Sony Xperia 1 Mark V. What is the quality of these microphones on this phone? Do you like it? I'm speaking directly into the phone. Maybe you don't like it? Tell me in the comments. Nighttime. Main sensor. Is the image quality a lot better? Let's add small light. Ultra wide lens at night. How is the sound quality of those microphones? What if we add small light for this ninja vlog? Selfie camera at night. How is the audio quality of the Sony Xperia phone? And of course, smartphones are still not better than mirrorless cameras in terms of video quality, especially in low light conditions.
especially if we are using something like 1.4 lens. This is Sigma 2.8, ISO is 6400. Actually we can make it even higher to see in the darkness. This light shines only for 1% and I am overexposed. Let me bring it down. 3200. And of course the image will be better. But it's heavy and stabilization is not that great. My arm already tired.
And slow motion. Video features give mixed feelings here. I love that video on Sony is not heavily overprocessed. In fact, all we need for good video is computational dual ISO log that has burn-in Rec 709 or Rec 2020 LUT. So we have maximum dynamic range without any need to grade footage in post, without any sharpening and oversaturation at all, just remove sharpness completely. It only ruins video. Also great stabilization on top, and we are good to go. I am happy with third-party app results, but wish we have this built-in normal camera app. Sony is one of the leaders in the cinema gear lineup, and I hope to see implementation for this in the future Pro mode in camera app, with waveforms, false color, for ease of use and exposure. AI features. Finally, Sony is the first phone on the planet that implement AI as... No, actually, I feel this will be the shortest AI part on all of my videos. There is no AI here. No true AI assistant that understands context. No even signs of something stupid and gimmicky. Conclusions. This phone is impersonation of my nostalgia, memories of my past, nearly a ghost that I try to chase, empty shell of something that is very important for my spirit, but I still feel like it has potential for the future and something that can bring you joy. The only big question here is the price. If this was $600–700 phone, it would be completely different story. But for $1,300 that I bought it for, and for some regions even $1,500 for 256 gigs of storage, it is really hard for me to recommend this for you. If you have no other choice, but you need device on global Android firmware, yes, I can see someone buy it, but I highly recommend to wait for discounts, or even look at the Sony Xperia 1 Mark III or even 5 Mark III. You can buy it 6 times cheaper, still get these feelings from Xperia phone, and camera will be not very far behind. It is really strange to hear from Sony fan to look at something else. But if budget is not a problem for you, and you absolutely do not care about photo quality in any shape or form, this phone will be your great daily companion with the conservative character of the old samurai. And that's all, my friends. Now I need to test it more against other phones. See you in the next videos.